But now that we're through the combine, we're through the Senior Bowl, heard you on with Charge earlier talking about Malik Willis. Can you kind of give us your quarterback rankings? Because I'm fascinated by this class, and I think it's going to be really interesting to see where all these guys come off the board.
These are for sure rough drafts, but this is where I see it now. I mean, I can give him my top 20. We'll give you the top 15. So we'll just break the news right now. My top one for sure is Malik Willis. That one is not changing. Matt Corral's my number 2. That probably will not change. But that's, then 3 is Kenny Pickett for me. And that's more about buying cost certainty than it is shooting for ceiling, right? Like he's probably going to become like a, for Vikings fans, you think about it more like Teddy Bridgewater, but like Andy Dalton is sort of who I think about. And the bonanza come for him is Kirk Cousins, but he's not getting any better than that. And there's not maybe there's a 10% chance that he has Kirk Cousins' career. So that's sort of the phylum that you're in for him. That's why I don't see him as a top 10, 15 pick. Number 4, I have Carson Strong. So I have Carson Strong above some other people, the kid from Nevada. The reason that he gets nitpicked in his profile is it's not necessarily even because he comes from like the smaller college, the G5. It's because he had this knee injury, and it was reported as being a long-term debilitating degenerative type thing. Well, what I've heard, it's not that. What I heard is it's not a long-term issue, and that this past season, when he rushed back on the early end of his timeline to play, he had this knee brace on like the whole season up until the finale. His very last game was the first game he played in 2021 without it, but that thing was, again, to cut down the swelling. Well, the injury this past season, you have the swelling, you have this knee that's still recovering. It affected his mobility, which people have talked about. It also affected his ability to throw under pressure because it was harder for him to move around. And then he was also probably trying not to step into any of the bullets flying, maybe plant that leg where the knee could get taken out. And so like, those different. And then the other thing was because his base was compromised, especially on his plant leg, a lot of these a lot of these throws that you were seeing, they were all arm type throws. And so I see it a little bit differently than some other folks where they ding him huge for having a degenerative knee condition that I don't think is actually degenerative. And then they're not baking in the fact that he was compromised last year, where it compromised the mobility. It compromised some of these throws where it was all arm instead of his entire body. And so he's getting these scarlet letters from people on his profile where if the knee is not degenerative and it's not a long-term issue, not only must you take that off as a sort of negative thing, but it also explains away the 2 other major ones on his profile, which is the thing of throwing under pressure and then the mobility. So for me, he is a cleaner prospect, I think, than some people are saying. He's a big pocket passer who's got a good arm. And he even mentioned this at the combine that now he's throwing the ball harder and with more velocity because that plant leg has gotten better. It's moving in on 100%, which isn't a surprise at all. When if you go out and you try to throw without, let's say you're right-handed and you don't have your right leg, you have to stay stationary and throw it. You're not going to be able to throw as far as, if you're moving and then you can plant off the thing full. My 5th quarterback is Desmond Ritter. Some other people are a bit higher on him than me, but I think his ceiling is capped, despite the fact he can push the ball down the field, despite the fact that he's very athletic. He tested 95th percentile athleticism, but he's a bit risk averse is the way that I would put it with him. Like Luke Fickell at Cincinnati clearly drilled into Desmond Ritter's head. Like, we want you to take the deep one-on-one shots to Alec Pierce specifically, a kid who's in this class, a wide receiver. But outside of that, they wanted him to take care of the ball. And so if it wasn't, for sure there, it was Desmond run or Desmond go down to, one of your safer options, short and outlet. Because of those reasons, I don't think his dual, the bigger arm and then the athleticism, that it will play up maybe like some people think to make him a first rounder. I compare him to Marcus Mariota. It's the same sort of play style. It's just people don't think about that as much because they came out of diametrically opposite college systems. Marcus Mariota was in the up-tempo Chip Kelly system, the guy that recruited him there. Kelly left after Mariota's first year, and then it was Helfrich the next 2 years, but it was the same system. Whereas Desmond Ritter, it was more of a pro-style thing, a methodical offense. They were one of the slowest in the nation in terms of running plays. And again, it was about, take calculated risks and then otherwise, take care of it, which I think is just embedded into Ritter. My 6th one is Sam Howell. I'm not a fan of Sam Howell. Coming into this past season, way more so, that's when he was getting all the Baker Mayfield comps. And some of those have still stuck around. but he ain't Baker Mayfield. They look the same. They have the same sort of physical profile. Athletic profile is probably fairly similar as well. But the big difference is Baker Mayfield at Oklahoma, he had a gumption about him, not a cliche of like, oh, he has swagger, but in terms of testing the defense at all levels, he wasn't afraid of taking those risks and putting the ball into tight windows and stuff like that, or making some of these sort of creative trick shot type throws in the intermediate area. Sam Howell, you saw an enormous depreciation of his game this past season when they lost 4 NFL skill guys. UNC did. Javonte Williams, Michael Carter at running back, and then Daz Newsome and Diami Brown on the outside. This year, he didn't have as much skill talent, even though their offensive line got a little bit better. UNC's, the skill talent was down. And because Howell, he needs to know that he might be even more risk averse than Desmond Ritter. He's not going to test the defense in those situations. The system that Phil Longo ran at UNC, it opened up these looks for him, whether it was downfield. If that's not there, you don't have the numbers there. There will be a number on the other side of the field. And so he's done sort of the half read sort of thing. And again, his game played way down when he lost all those skill guys. So a little bit lower on him. And then sort of, everyone has the same top, well, I guess 7, because you'd have the 6 Senior Bowl quarterbacks and then Corral. So my 7th one shouldn't be a surprise. It's Bailey Zappi. But then at 8, that's where it starts to get interesting again with everyone's rankings, because, I mean, like it's pretty consensus that the top 7 guys in the class. But my 8, 9, 10 are Dustin Crum from Kent State, Cole Kelly from Southeast Louisiana, and then Jack Cohn from Notre Dame. So those are a couple of sleeper type guys that I would point the Vikings and the Vikings fans to if indeed they end up taking a quarterback like late on day 3 because the new administration doesn't like Kellen Mond.